All right, Michelle, this is a conversation that I've just been dying to have because I'm going to be honest with you. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, and I'm sure that I'm probably not the only person that you've heard say that. So today we're going to be talking about all things Instagram and Instagram strategy. But before we dive in there, I was hoping that you could just start off by introducing yourself, because on your website, you said that my business journey hasn't been a straight path, but it's led me exactly to where I need to be today. And that's here helping you. So with that being said, share a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So right now, where I am right now is I have an agency where we help personality-led businesses with their organic marketing. So that means we do Instagram for people, we do blogging, Pinterest, branding and websites, SEO, all of the things, email, all the things. And I also teach. I have two sides of my business where I have an agency, and then I teach how to grow on Instagram. I have 5 kids, and my oldest is 18, my youngest is 9. And so that's where I am right now. Where I started is when my son, was just barely born, my first baby, I started an Etsy shop. My path has been pretty windy, but I've done Etsy where I made handmade dresses. I was a photographer. I had a nonprofit. I've done podcasting forever. Anyway, and all of those things, because I've been doing it for the last 18 years, have led me to this point where I completely understand the woman entrepreneur journey because I've lived it. I've also done so many different avenues that it's given me so much insight. So now, I teach men too, but I talk to mostly women, and there are some specific challenges, I would say, and opportunities that we women have in starting a business. And because I've been doing it in all stages of motherhood, it's been really impactful and really helpful because I can speak to, at the beginning of this call, right, we're talking about you have a 17-month-old. Okay, don't worry about waking up early and going to the gym, And so, and that's a pretty unique thing with women entrepreneurs and motherhood, is that your life is going to look different every about 2 or 3 years because of how you evolve and how your kids change. So that was a lot about me, but anyway, so that's the energy and that's a background in which I am bringing to the entrepreneur space.
I love it. And before we hit record today, I was telling you one of the many reasons that I was excited to talk to you today was because of the fact that you have been able to build this successful agency and teaching business while you were also a mom to 5 kids. That's not a small number. I'm trying to get by with 1 over here. So it's one of those things where I'm having lots of conversations with women who are moms. And like you said, there are a lot of different challenges that arise that maybe you don't experience whether you're not in this season of life. So I'm really trying to bring to light some of these conversations to make it the norm, to understand that we don't need to put so much pressure on yourselves to be a certain way all the time, because like you said, our life is going to be going through seasons of every 2 to 3 years. We're going to go through some changes. So taking a step back here, you mentioned that you first started that Etsy shop when your son was relatively fresh out of the oven over here. So what prompted you to start your entrepreneurial journey then?
Yeah, so I just graduated from college and I graduated in public relations. I quit my PR job so that I could follow my husband to medical school. And I was pregnant. I was 6 months pregnant when we moved to Arizona, and it was so hot. Man, we moved in August and I thought I was swollen when I left, but when I got to Arizona, I just blew up even more. And I am a person who is constantly creating, right? Whether that's actually creating, maybe I should say I'm constantly moving. And so it was really hard to suddenly not have something that was mine. And so for those, I was 6 months pregnant when we got there. And then in November, I had my baby, and I was like, I have to have something that's mine. And I was like, I'm going to do a wedding cake business. And I learned how to do that. And I was like, with being a new mom, that stress I can't do. And so I started an Etsy shop, and there was just I'm going to say it again, 18 years ago. And Etsy was pretty new. Selling on the internet was pretty new. But there was this moment I listed my handmade hats on the internet. And when I woke up the next morning, they were sold to someone in Pennsylvania. And I thought, what magic have I just uncovered? That I can be this girl, this new mom in Arizona, and I can put something and someone across the country can buy it. And I was like, I'm hooked. I'm all in, because I have always really wanted to be a mom. And I grew up with a mom who was a nurse, and she did a lot of other things, and she was so interesting, and she was always learning and always growing. And I wanted to be like that too. And I just feel like right now, we've never had this opportunity to do both in the way that we can do it now. we get to choose, right? Like I get to choose when I show up and do coaching calls, like, and that is going to correspond when my kids are at school or when they're napping. Like they don't nap anymore. They don't nap. They stay up really late, but but it can change as your life changes. And now we have the opportunity to do that. And I love it. And I think there's a lot of women out there feeling like I want to be a mom or I want to do this thing, a caregiver, it doesn't have to just be motherhood, but now we have the chance to like also include our passions and our business if we want. And so it's just been such a gift throughout my whole motherhood to be able to do this.
Well, first of all, I want to talk about Arizona, 6 months pregnant in the dead of summer.
It was the
I feel
worst.
for you. I'm glad that you made it because I know that that's tough. Even I'm in California just like you are. And even sometimes in the dead of summer, it's pretty miserable here. So I'm glad that you made it through that season of life. You did it. But also you mentioned something really interesting is that you thought about opening up this cake business, but it was going to be a little bit more on demand where you had to work around someone else's schedule. And this is something I talk about a lot is being able to create a business that works for your life rather than you fitting your life into a business. And I think especially as moms, that is something that was like a light bulb moment for me. Oh, wow, I can actually create a business around the life that I want, work the hours that I want and still have success. And like you said, because I can do both today because of this thing called the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe something else to pull from that is I think we put a lot of pressure, especially on our first step. Like we think like, okay, I am meant to be a professional cake decorator, or I'm meant to like start this Etsy shop and then we think that has to be something that we carry forever. And my Etsy shop was like, I started with what I knew. I knew how to sew and I loved fabrics and I loved putting colors together. And I started with something that I loved, but I'm not there anymore, right? That lasted a few years and it moved me to the next step of where I needed to be, which was photography. And I think that a lot of the things that stop us from pursuing stuff is we think it has to be this perfect choice. And it just doesn't. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can look at our life and say, oh, like that's not going to fit, but there is something that will, and I'm going to take that first step to try to find it out.
I truly believe the hardest part is just to start. Just taking any sort of action because it just accumulates. Once you take the first step, it's easier to take that second and third. And what your business starts at today isn't necessarily what it's going to look like years later. Case in point right here with your entire story. So at what point after you created this Etsy shop, became a photographer, did you get into Instagram?
Well, I had been, so Instagram came quite a few years later and it wasn't used for business. But it was a lot used for photography. Like it was actually made for photographers, right? To show their pictures. And so I started using it casually. But as social media evolved and became more of a business and marketing tool, I will tell you that like actually marketing is my love affair. It's not sewing, it's not photography. I love all of those things as well. But I love the art of figuring out how to communicate simply to people. And that's what marketing is like, how do I like understand where they are and understand where they could be and talk to them about that? And social media, man, like I know everyone kind of has a love-hate relationship with Instagram, but I will to my dying day say like what a gift it is because we've never had this opportunity to have such a loud microphone. You could have 0 followers, post one piece of content today and reach millions. Like, I just want you to think about that. I want you to think about your grandma or your mom and think about they never had that opportunity. They never had that possibility for impact. And yeah, we have to learn how to use it. We have to learn how to navigate it alongside of like making sure we are disciplined in how we use it. And we have to learn how to create content that's going to take off. But all of that is an opportunity to reach the people that we need to reach.
Well, knowledge is power on both ends. So obviously we're able to be empowered and to help other people and really educate them. But there's an opportunity for us here with Instagram and this conversation today to be able to really boost our knowledge. Yeah. Because I think that's where the love-hate relationship comes in, is that there's that big question mark on how do I properly navigate this platform and make sure that I'm making the most use of my time on the platform? Because if we're not careful, it can suck us in. And I think we've all been guilty of just that mindless scrolling. But for the people that have the massive success, they're not the mindless scrollers. They're really using a strategy behind this to be able to make sure that they're working smarter and not harder here and having that impact. Because like you said, all it could take is one post and you could have an impact on millions of people here. So do you mind diving into some of
Let's
the
talk about
Instagram,
Instagram.
like,
Yeah. So about 2.5 years ago, I was teaching Instagram, but I was like on Instagram, I was teaching all things business. So I was talking about blogging, email, like all the things on my account. And I wasn't growing. I was stuck at 18,000 followers. And I was like, listen, I am a smart lady. Like, we are going to figure this out. Like, why am I not growing? So I took a step back and I was like, okay, what would I tell someone else? I'm like, first, I would niche down. So I needed to not talk to everyone who's ever thought about starting a business, but I needed to talk about one thing. And so I niched down to Instagram. I said, I'm talking about Instagram. And then I was like, okay, what else would I tell myself? I would say, okay, we talk a lot about marketing funnels in the marketing world, right? Like you create content to attract people in, then you have to nurture, then you can sell, right? It's all part of a marketing funnel. But no one was talking about applying that specifically to Instagram. And I was like, oh, but this makes a lot of sense. Like you have to create some content because of the algorithms. Instagram is actively looking for people who don't follow you, who might want to follow you, and putting your content in front of those people. And so I started applying the attract, nurture, sell method to my content. And within 2 or 3 months, I went viral. And I went from 18,000, now I'm at about 250,000 followers. And it was all because I was like, oh, there's an actual strategy here. So let's break that down. First of all, we're going to niche down. We're going to talk to one person with one problem. Please don't get too stuck on this and think about this for 3 weeks. Think about the problem that you solve and then talk to that person. And then I want you to create content just for that person. We're not going to talk about one day, we're not going to talk about our clothes one day and then our dog the other day and then cooking the other day, right? Because the Instagram algorithm is trying to understand what content you create so it can put your content in front of the right people. So we want to make it easy. Be like, oh, Michelle talks about Instagram. So if Megan's interested in Instagram, I'm going to put her content in front of Megan. So we're going to niche down and then we're going to make our content niche down so that it's easy for people to say yes, easy for people to know what problem we solve, and easy for the algorithm to put our content out there. And then we are going to create some content for people who don't follow us. And when I break that down, I think about like, what would people share? So these are like the hacks, the quick tips. These are entertaining, their lists, those kind of things. Those are like our attraction content. And then that nurture content is a content that helps you set yourself up as the expert. And it also helps people like understand you and build a relationship with you. So think about carousels or more in-depth education content. And then you have your selling content because we have to make money too. So this is where you talk about your product or your transformation, and it's where you can sell. So I do 50% attraction, 30% nurture, 20% sell.
So those big influencers out there that have a ton of followers, but then you hear that they're not making any money.
Yeah.
Is this because that they're not following this specific strategy, or what's kind of the thing behind that?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people who have big followings and they don't know how to sell to their audience. And part of that has been fine because in the past, because they have been making their money through brand deals. And so brands pay them, they know they get a lot of exposure. But now because there's so many influencers, if you don't know how to sell to your audience and get your audience to act and to make a purchase, then you're not getting the conversions and you're going to get skipped over when brands are looking at influencers to use. So we have to know that what we're creating, what we're putting out, one of the things we have to do is we have to train our audience to buy from us. So if you are an influencer, yeah, you can get millions of views with cat videos and never sell a thing, right? And so we have to have that that selling content in there because we have to train our audience to actually not just consume our content as like a TV show, but that they're buying from us. They're taking action from what we're asking them to do. And then that nurture piece is like, listen, again, like influencers are now, there's just so many of them. So why choose one over the other? It's that nurture piece. What are they doing? Like, why do I relate with them? I call it like their hook, right? What's the hook of their account? If someone was like, you need to follow Michelle because of this, there has to be something to put in there, not just because she has a beautiful life or a beautiful house. So yeah, so I think, you're going to see, or you're seeing a lot of influencers shift or struggle because they haven't made this change and they're doing it the old way.
So I find that so interesting because I think we've been trained to think that, okay, you have this big following, you're massively successful. but there's a lot of people that have success with very few followers out there. And it's because they know how to convert those followers into sales. And I think all of us listening today, the goal here is obviously to have a successful business. And in order to do that, you have to sell. So can you maybe walk us through some strategies on how to really harness the selling strategy part of this? Yes.
Yeah.
The selling strategy.
So one thing I would say is I want you to think about how many people do you actually need to purchase? So I was DMing with a photographer who was like, why? Like, I'm just not growing my following. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you probably need, I don't know, 20 to 30, maybe 50 sessions a year, you in a specific location. And so you really don't need 1 million followers to get that. And so I think just being like really clear, like, what do I actually need and who do I need to like talk to? And then the second thing is you have to accept that you're a business. And what does it mean to be a business? That you have a product that you're going to sell to someone. Yes, it's like you're serving and you're helping, but you should not be ashamed that you are selling something. And I will also say that probably 95% of the women I talk to are scared of selling, like completely scared of asking for the sale. And they don't want to be too pushy. They don't want to be too salesy. They don't want someone to think a bad thought because they're asking them to buy something. And so if you're just starting out, one of the biggest legs up you can do, or anytime, is to just get used to asking your audience to do something. So selling can be like, I'm going to sell product, or I'm an influencer. I'm going to talk about this sweatshirt I'm wearing and hope people buy. It also can be like, hey, I want you to get on my email list, or hey, I want you to listen to my podcast. But we need to train our audience to take action from what we ask them to do. So the first thing is get used to asking your audience to do stuff. So on a regular basis, like daily, are you asking your audience, like, are you getting them used to buying from you? And the second thing I would say is you need to sell solutions. So do you know what your audience, like why your audience would buy whatever you're selling? They're having a problem. There's a pain point. If you start speaking to their pain point, it makes selling so much easier because you're solving problems. You're not just selling a product for you to make money. You're like, oh no, this is clearly hard for you and I have an easy solution or a better solution or something. So those two things, get really used to selling and do it regularly. And then number two is to start with solving the problems. It makes selling so much easier.
I completely agree with you. I actually come from a sales background myself in the corporate world. And it's one of those things that it was just second nature to me to be able to show up every day, have these conversations and not feel slimy or salesy anymore. But then it was one of those things when you have your own business, all of a sudden you get a block. And you're like, why do I have this block when this is actually something I truly believe in, that I'm super passionate about? And I'm not the only one that has had that problem. Like you were saying, you talk to women all the time, and this is something that we have. But on the reverse side, as the consumer, I'm going to someone's page expecting that they're going to sell me something. So if I'm going to someone's page expecting that, then why am I not feeling that in return? I'm gonna have to pause really quick because they're right outside my window, and I am so sorry.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I remember when I was a photographer and I hired a photographer to take my family's pictures, and we got to the end, and like as a photographer, it's always a little bit weird to ask for money. Like I was always like, okay, so I guess it's this much, and I was always a little sheepish. And then I asked a fellow photographer to take my pictures, and we got to the end of the session, and she was so weird about me paying her. And I was like, well, of course I'm going to pay you. Like, as a customer, I was expecting to pay her. I knew how much, and she was acting so weird. And I was like, it was such a mirror. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? I need to just confidently be like, yeah, it's $500 or whatever it was, because people are expecting to pay for your product. And it becomes so confusing if you have an Instagram account or whatever, and people are like, so what are they selling? Like, no one should ask that, right? Because as a business, people are expecting you to sell stuff.
Well, and one of the things that I've personally experienced, and I know that you do this very well, and I'm going to actually tell everyone why here, is that being able to show up and provide value. So as an example, right now, I'm actually in your Real Love 2025 challenge. And it's one of those things where every single morning, for those people that aren't familiar with this challenge, I wake up because I'm on the West Coast, and almost immediately you have been able to tell me exactly what to post on my feed with the trending audio and a caption. And it's one of those things where it has taken so much of a lift off of my plate to actually have to like think about, okay, what am I going to post today? Because honestly, that's a huge like struggle that I have sometimes. But then I've been able to get an inside look into, okay, if I am getting so much value in her free program, what would it actually look like to work with her in the paid program? And I think sometimes if you do have just this hesitation with selling in general, provide something like this where people wow them, you delight them, show them what it could be like in this free version where honestly, it's a no-brainer to be able to sign up for that next step because there has been so much value provided, again, in the completely unpaid version here. And so I just have to get a really big shout out to your team and you because this has been an entire month long. I have never seen anyone else do something like that for an entire month because I know how much time it takes on the back end to do something like that. And it's been completely free.
Yeah, and I think like just seeing is one of the things that, so for me, like you said, like one of the big hangups with posting on Instagram is like, I don't know what to post. And everyone second guesses, like, right, you get there, you scroll, you waste all this time. And then they don't see any results. And so what we did with the Real Love Challenge is we're like, okay, we are going to tell you exactly what to post. Don't think about it. And people are having like their accounts reached has gone up like 450,000%. Like it's just insane. But you kind of have to give people some successes before they even think the Instagram is going to work for them. And so we've done this Real Love Challenge and it's so fun to watch because it really just makes you like, I'm doing this and I don't have to think about it. And then you start seeing results and then you're like, oh, so if I invest a little bit into Instagram, then I can get results. And it's like, yeah. And then the next step isn't easy, hopefully, right? Come be a part of my coaching group. But if not, like you still trust me and hopefully you're like talking about me. And also like as the creator, like love it so much. Like people are DMing me their success and I'm not like, well, are you in my paid group or not? You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are you kidding me? I get to help you do this. And yeah, I want to help you more, but if it's not the time, it's totally fine. And then selling doesn't become so icky, but it's like, I've served you so long that if you're ready, then you're like, yeah, let's do this.
Well, and what I also like about this is that it shows that there's enough room for everyone out there. Some people think that, okay, it's a saturated market. There's not enough space at the table for me. It's already been done before. But clearly, people that are just starting out have been able to have wild success. And all of us aren't reinventing the wheel. We're just putting our own spin on it. We're all posting the same things essentially, but with targeting our certain niches and making sure that it's us in a way. And I think that's what people resonate with is when you put your personal self out there because it's relatable and that's what people follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually your magic, right? It's the thing that you get to hone in on and it's the thing that attracts your people, the ones that are supposed to be in your following in your sphere.
Absolutely. Well, I know that this isn't just the only facet of your business. I know we briefly touched on it at the very beginning here, but what are the other ways that you work with your clients?
Sure. So I have Insta Social Society, and that is if you're beginning, this is a good place for you. We have a basic Instagram course as well as like a community meet weekly. That's a great place. We also have Grow the Gram. I'm going to be launching a course and it's really like if you're ready to take the next step. And then I have my agency where if you're like making money on a consistent basis or if you're like ready to build a brand and a website, we will do that as well as your organic marketing. So we can cover from the very beginning to where you're ready to scale. We help you all along the way.
Really just meeting everyone where their needs are at every step of their business journey here. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but we have to talk about this mom content because you built this entire thing as a mom to 5 kiddos. And I'm personally in the thick of it. I started my business while I was pregnant. So all I know is building a business while I'm completely sleep deprived. So from a personal standpoint, I see someone with your level of success and I strive to be able to be in a place where you are one day. And I know that I'm not alone because all of us are trying to figure out how we can do both these days. How can I be a present mom and have a successful business where success to me doesn't mean working around the clock. Success to me means being able to financially provide for my family, but also not miss out on those big moments. So long story short, how have you done it?
Well, I think before we started, you said, you're like, I just saw something about you going to work out with your son at like 5 a.m., 4:30 in the morning. And you're like, how do you do that? I'm so tired. And I was like, you have a 17-month-old. You should not be doing that. So the first thing I would say is do not compare yourself with where someone else is at. All of us are just trying to figure out what works for us. And also what works for me is going to be different from what works for you because your priorities are different. So figure out like what are the non-negotiables right now in your today. A lot of times we think 5 years ahead and we don't know. We do not know what's going to be happening in 5 years. But like right now, what are their priorities? Is it mealtime? Is it mornings? Is it whatever? Figure out what the non-negotiables are for you. Don't ask anyone else. You and your husband, you and your whatever, you figure it out and then make those a priority. And then you can build your life around that. But it has to, I guess, at every stage. So I've changed, again, different iterations depending on how many kids or how old my kids or whatever. And I think it comes down to being really intentional. And that doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean it was pretty. It doesn't mean my house wasn't messy. None of that. But being really intentional about how I wanted my business to look and how I wanted my motherhood to look. And again, that's changed throughout my whole time of doing a business and motherhood and allowing for myself just saying like, I am going to grow and change, and so are my kids, and so is my business. And that's okay. And I'm not where I want to be now, but I know where I can be if I keep going and believing in that.
And something I'd probably also add to that is to lean on support because we, I think, especially as women, as moms, sometimes think that we have to carry the load all ourselves. And it's a lot sometimes. And I personally have had to learn when to ask for help. And that's been hard for me sometimes to do, to admit that I can't do this all alone. And so I've had to lean on my support system. Like today, I'm able to record because I've brought in my mom to make this day possible. My husband, whenever he's around, I'll ask him to do things. And I think that we need to be able to be okay with the help and accept it. Otherwise, this isn't possible.
And I really think that it limits your growth. I would say that I spent too much time just like wanting my life to look like the rest of the moms that I hung out with. And I tried to just like, it was almost like a secret life almost, right? Where I was just like, when no one's looking, I'm over here making money. Don't worry, don't look over here, And I think that did a lot of harm to my business. I mean, it didn't make it better. And it made me feel disconnected with people because I wasn't letting them in to what I needed or what I was doing or what I was hoping or dreaming and all those things. And we don't have to do it alone, not just because we need help, but also people want to cheer you on and people want to get to know you. And so you don't have to hide it.
Yeah. And that's why join a group like yours. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm hosting or about to launch a community for moms. So find a community and a place where it feels right for you. There's so many different options out there that, especially because of this little thing called the internet we have today, we are more connected than ever. And all we need to do is just tap into the support and the resources when we need it. I'm blown away by what you've been able to create in a relatively short amount of time. I know how quickly those years can go. Like the days are long sometimes, but the years are short from what I've learned. So I know you have a podcast. We briefly mentioned this way at the beginning, but let's circle back around. Your podcast is called The Social Strategist. Tell us a little bit more what we can expect if we tune in there.
Yes. So it is you're going to get strategy and you're going to get up-to-date information about using social media to grow your business. And you're probably going to get a little kick in the pants because I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do to grow your business and what you need to stop doing. And listen, you just got to get over some stuff and you got to sell and you got to do those things. And that's what we talk about over there. So I'm really big into bringing strategy to social media because the reason why you're frustrated with social media, not you specifically, but you as a general person, is because you don't have a strategy. And that can feel, it's just so much time is wasted and so much energy. And there are things that you can do to build a strategy so that your social media can be the marketing engine of your business.
Well, I definitely need the kick in the butt. For sure. I've listened to the podcast and I love it. I actually was posting about it the other day on my stories because it was so relatable to my season of life and everything that I talk about here. It's basically prioritizing your life as a mom and your business around that. And it was the kick in the butt that I needed to hear that.
Good. Good. It's happening.
Now, okay, so if people want more of a kick in the butt, where can they find you in all the different places?
Sure. Come find me anywhere. I am Michelle Gifford. So come to Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. I am Michelle Gifford. I have a YouTube channel. I have a podcast. I have a website. All of those are I'm Michelle Gifford. I'm on Pinterest. I'm on all the places, but Instagram is where I hang out the most. Definitely come hang out with me in stories. I share a ton there. So, yeah, I would love to have you.
Well, and I'll be the first one to say it's totally worth the follow. So take a look in the show notes and get all the good information there because, like I said, the value that Michelle provides is just untapped here. So, Michelle, I did tell you the only piece of anything I was for sure going to ask you today was just final piece of advice for that female entrepreneur looking to really kickstart her journey. What would you tell her?
Start where you are and then take the next step. So you do not have to be who you're going to be in 10 years. I would have never dreamed that this is what I would have 18 years ago when I started. And you don't have to know the end to take that first step. And you're going to mess up and you're going to have disappointments and it's going to be rough. And it's also the best. And you get to meet people and you get to serve people. And it all starts with you taking that step of putting yourself out there. And you're going to worry about people judging you, and they will. And it doesn't matter because who you are and who you can be is determined by the steps you take.
So good. And your steps, as we talked about earlier, that it hasn't been a straight path of steps. You've had some twists and turns along the way, but you haven't lost sight of what you truly value, and that was the creativity. And the common theme, even though your business has had multiple iterations, is there's always been that creative element behind what you do. So find something that truly lights you up, take that first step, and have fun. So, Michelle, thank you so much for hopping on today and joining us on the Self-Starter podcast.
Yep. Thank you, Megan. It's been a joy.